Mary Shelley may have been a supporting player to some of the biggest bold-faced names of her day, but in many respects she may have been the biggest star of them all. She is, of course, the English novelist, wife to one of the most notorious poets of British Romanticism, creator of one of the most enduring characters and plots of the history of horror, spanning fiction, stage, and film. She stands as an icon of high romanticism, science fiction, and feminist literary studies. Now, Mary Shelley was extraordinary from the moment of her birth. She was born to the political philosophers William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft. Her mom died just a few days after giving birth. She was raised then by her father, largely, in a very intellectual household, surrounded by her father's books and intellectual friends, always on the edge of poverty, but young Mary had free range of the intellectual feast of that household, and he himself tutored her. She had little formal education, but certainly much more than most girls her age. She met the aristocratic poet Percy Shelley through her father. Shelley was an acolyte of her dad and his work as a philosopher, and Shelley made repeated promises to help Godwin out financially, and those rarely materialized. Nevertheless, the 16-year-old Mary eloped with the 21-year-old Percy and ran off to France and Switzerland with Mary's 15-year-old stepsister Claire in tow. After a month on the continent, the couple returned to England nearly penniless, and realizing some of the more sober realities of marriage. Shelley's ex-wife gave birth to his son around this time. The constant company of Mary's sister Claire caused tensions. Many scholars believe Claire and Shelley were having an affair at this point. Mary gave birth to a daughter 2 months premature who soon died. That loss haunted Mary for many years. The couple had some relief when Shelley came into an inheritance following the death of his grandfather, and Mary gave birth to a son whom she named William after her father. With this brief upturn, the Shelleys took a vacation abroad, traveling with their son and Claire Claremont to Geneva in the spring and summer of 1816. Claire was soon pregnant by Shelley's friend Lord Byron, who had joined them along with his friend and physician John William Polidori. The strained social dynamics of the group notwithstanding, rainy and overcast weather lent great frustration to them by keeping them all cooped up inside. There was also an awful lot of overcast cloudiness from a hurricane, or not a hurricane, a volcano eruption on the other side of the world that is still a point of major study by geologists and climatologists. It was this combination of boredom and frustration and a little claustrophobia mixed with some regular readings of German ghost tales that prompted Byron to propose, some have called it a contest, or it was really just an activity, that they all should take a shot at writing scary stories. Now, Shelley more or less ignored the project, although it would bear some fruit later on. Byron penned his apocalyptic poem Darkness. Polidori wrote what is generally considered the first modern vampire genre fiction. And Mary, after what she called a waking dream about a scientist bringing a corpse back to life, started writing Frankenstein. Scholars debate the extent to which Percy Shelley collaborated on the authorship of this novel. Most tend to agree that he made some editorial suggestions, but the real work was all Mary's. Published anonymously in 1818, the publishers were concerned that a woman's name as author would undercut sales. Her name appeared on subsequent editions, revised in 1823, and she added a fairly detailed preface about its composition for an edition that came out in 1831. Stage plays soon took up the story and added to her growing celebrity, but Mary had sold the rights and made little money from that success. And their family troubles didn't end. While she was writing, Mary's half-sister Fanny Imlay committed suicide. So did the wife Shelley had abandoned. Just before the publication of the novel, Mary gave birth to a daughter, indicating that a good part of the novel's composition, she was pregnant and in mourning. Financial problems persisted. Just a couple months after the first edition of Frankenstein was published, Mary and Percy Shelley left England for Italy, largely to escape creditors. Within 15 months of their escape, both their children were dead from illnesses. They had a fourth child, a boy called Percy Florence, named for the city of his birth, but rumors of Percy Shelley's involvement with other women kept Mary's marriage strained. She almost died during a miscarriage in June of 1822, and then 1 month later, Percy Shelley drowned while sailing off the coast of Viareggio. Mary Shelley lived the rest of her life as a working writer, producing a great variety of material. Returning to England a year after Percy's death, she raised her son, who had inherited his father's baronetcy and led, by all accounts, in contrast with his parents, a happy but unremarkable life. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley is now considered a major creative force within the Romantic tradition. Just a few of her highlighted works include Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, as she called it, came out in 1818, of course, followed up by Matilda, another story called Valperga, another short novel called The Last Man in 1826, all really significant in forming genre fiction, and a story, one of several that she wrote for magazines for money, Transformation in 1831, really good. Most of the rest of her stories, at least, are middling. They were just kind of produced for the marketplace. But you do find sparks in there of that primal talent that produced the masterpiece of Frankenstein. She wrote these magazines. She wrote for these magazines. She wrote travel books, several biographies, and she also acted as an editor and publisher, publishing a lot of the work that Percy had left unprinted at his death, and also what many critics consider canonical editions of his poetic legacy. Mary Shelley lived the last dozen years of her life plagued by frequent headaches and bouts of partial paralysis. She died in 1851 at age 53, leaving a legacy of a novelist, journalist, editor, and a giant, a true giant in her own right, of the British Romantic era.